Full screen. Spicca le robe dentro. Hi to everyone. I'm Ada from PoisonedRock, and today we have, for my pleasure, and all the 80s and 90s hard rock lovers, Todd Pole from Roxy Blue. Hi Todd, how are you?
I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm fine. Finally at my place, happier than ever, so I'm really good.
Well,
So,
good. I'm recovering. I'm recovering a little bit today from last night's extravaganza and got a little bit of a headache, but I feel good.
How was it last night gigs?
Last night was a crazy night. We did a Roxy Blue played a club here in Memphis, our hometown. And it was after party for a Starship featuring Mickey Thomas. We had a really good time. It was a late night show, great crowd, and just tried to dodge the tequila shots all night. And I didn't do a real good job of dodging them, so I'm feeling a little rough today. But glad to be on the show and and making me feel better by being on the show.
It's always better being on the stage. I think every musician knows that. Yeah. So I want to go straight to speaking with the first questions, because of course, like we said some months ago, that many people didn't know nowadays, especially the newbie fans, the new generation, they didn't know about the amazing rock scene Roxy Blue were born. So I would like to start, like for example, to explain, just like how started Roxy Blue in the early 90s in Memphis.
How we started. Well, I mean, it was the coolest thing about the rock scene in Memphis was extraordinary, man. Back in 1990, 91, before we got signed, we had bands like Tora, Every Mother's Nightmare, Roxy Blue.
Yeah, I love them.
Great friends of ours, and everybody was kind of the club scene and all the music scene in Memphis was just blowing up. I mean, everybody was getting out. All the shows were packed, and it was kind of a surreal situation back then. I mean, it was almost like a dream world. I mean, I'm sure the other bands would say the same thing. It was, it was it's super fun. But how we got started, we joined, we all kind of hooked up by accident, met Sid, a guitar player at the time. And it kind of came together pretty fast. And we just started, the thing about Roxy Blue is we started playing original music immediately. We didn't do cover songs at all.
That's good.
Besides Squeezebox, we ended up, doing that one, but we just went out and started opening for a lot of different bands. And then we realized soon after that nobody wanted us opening anymore. And we didn't understand why, because we were a relatively new band. So, and then my friends were like, "Oh man, you guys you're blowing people off the stage and blah, blah, blah." And of course we're just out having a good time playing. So we started headlining our own shows, which was kind of scary for us because we haven't done that. And
it was the beginning, of course.
Yeah. And I mean, the people were coming out and it was packed, and that kind of started the whole buzz. And I guess what really kicked it off for us is we had our lawyer. We got a lawyer out of Nashville, Jim Zumwalt, who got involved, who kind of started shopping the band a little bit. He really believed in us, which was very important. But back then it was a different deal because you had to really back in like the early 90s and stuff, you had to kind of create a buzz. That was the deal. Record companies wanted to know if you had who is this band? Do they got a buzz? They'd come see you, and they'd see the place was packed out. And once it's packed out, they're like, man, this band. And then you got to put on a good show, and if they like you. So we did that for a while, and then we were playing in Memphis at a little club one night, and Janie Lane from Warrant was in there. They were in town playing. Yeah, and Janie liked the band a lot, and so he kind of boosted the buzz in the industry that he was interested in this band out of Memphis. So we started getting a lot of record companies coming to Memphis, and the night we met up with Tom Zutaut from Geffen, who had signed Guns N' Roses and Tesla and Motley Crue and whatever. And so he did not sign us at first. He liked the band, and I guess he told our lawyer he wanted first option, but we just kind of went on and just kept playing. I mean, our lifestyle back then, we're in our early 20s and we're just, every day was a party. I mean, no responsibilities. We were just living the rock and roll. And
the real motto of rock and roll.
Right. It was a beautiful time in our lives. I mean, everything, just the partying, just whatever you can imagine in rock and roll, it was happening. So we played the night we got signed. We were playing a club. It was jam packed, and we had 2 record labels there to see us. And our lawyer was there, so we're thinking, we might get signed tonight. You never know. I mean, this is another scenario. People coming to see you, so we just kind of had been used to it. So anyway, we played, and little did we know that Tom Zutaut from Geffen had slipped in right before we started, and he heard the band. And when we got done, we went back to the back dressing room. The crowd was wanting an encore. And all of a sudden we look up, and it's our lawyer and Tom Zutaut from Geffen. And he's like, do you guys want to be on Geffen Records? And, and then that changed our lives. We said yes. And then the tears kind of started flowing down, and everybody was excited, and the party began. So
then you released your first album, like One Song.
Want Some, yes.
And what about Want Some? An amazing album.
Well, Want Some was a record that, I mean, it was a weird time because we went to LA, and we had Motley Crue's management, Doug Thaler, Top Rock management. We had Tom Zutaut from Geffen. We had Mike Klink, who's recorded everybody doing our record. So we were kind of surrounded by these larger than life figures, and they put us up in a huge house in Malibu, California, and that's where we recorded all of our main tracks. And and it's weird because we would do our pre-production at a place called Mates Rehearsal Studios in LA, and Kiss came by there, Motley Crue would come by, and they would just Tammy Down from and the guys in Faster Pussycat. I mean, it was like everybody would come by because of Mike Klink, and they'd come by and hang out. Guys in Slaughter would come by. It was almost like a fairy tale for us.
All these bands, like you listen to your childhood teenagers era.
Yeah, when you're sitting there, when you're actually sitting there doing pre-production for your record, and Paul Stanley and Gene Simmons are sitting on the couch in front of you, 15 feet away from you, we froze. I mean, what do you do at that point? So, but anyway, we went through that whole scenario. We made our record. We went to a lot of cool studios. We went to the old Warner Brothers where Van Halen had done their early stuff. I know Tom Zutaut just wanted to give us a great experience. So we recorded in a lot of different studios. We did our main tracks in the house. I remember Tommy Lee used to come out to the house and play drums, and it was just crazy, man. So, but in the same time, our record was kind of being worked on. And I remember Tom Zutaut and John Kalogner being in the offices at Geffen. And John Kalogner, I think he knew something was getting ready to change in music. And I think, Nirvana had just been signed to DGC, which is a sister company of Geffen.
My further question,
and
was, in fact,
so it was a weird time because Seattle hadn't hit yet, but we're all excited. And then he was like, you should release their demo of Times Are Changing while they're working on the record. And then they'll be at least halfway goal when their record goes out, because they thought that was a hit song. And Tom Zutaut, I think, had different plans, and he was going to let that be like the second or third major single. Unfortunately, because the way the music business was, Nirvana hit, and I'll never forget driving around with one of my guys from Geffen Records, Todd Sullivan, and we're driving around in LA, and he's like, man, let me play you this this cassette. It was a cassette back then. Let me play you this cassette of this band that Gary Gertz just signed called Nirvana. We think they're going to be pretty big. And he plays me the cassette, and it smells like Teen Spirit. And I was floored. I was like, this is crazy good. It did something to my soul. I mean, it, like, as much as I love the music we were doing, that did something to me, and it really did change me. And I'm in the midst of making a record thinking, I'm excited, man. We're going to take over the world and blah, blah, blah. And then I heard that, and I was like, God, should we go back and re-record our record? So that was a big change. I watched a lot of my friends, the guys in Warrant. Well, all that genre of music, those people back then that we were hanging out with, that were so-called pretty much rock stars, playing arenas and kind of going, what are we going to do? I mean, it literally, when people tell you it changed overnight, I'm telling you, by being out there, within 2 weeks, the entire music industry changed. Everything. It went from, Motley Crue, Poison, and not to even put those people in the same, I mean, they weren't really the same. Motley was a lot heavier, but I'm just saying that genre of what you call hair metal, which was fun music, it was, it just got flipped over. And within 2 weeks, literally everything changed. Everything changed. I'm talking... I mean, everybody knows it did, but we were in the middle of it, and it was crazy how 1 minute you're on top of the world, and the next minute you're wondering, well, what are we going to do? So a lot of our plans got changed. Tommy Lee, we played the Troubadour, and Tommy Lee had announced that we were going to go on tour with them, which was a big deal. I mean, that was probably going to break us open, at least for a little bit. And when the Seattle wave came in, all plans changed. And I'm not a bitter person, so I actually like that music. So I was, as much as it killed us, I think it almost had to happen. I thought that being in LA, I never considered Roxy Blue a hair band. I never did. I mean, all the guys in our band could really play their instruments. We kind of got thrown into that probably because of our look. We got compared to like the Van Halen thing. The Van Halen thing was a big thing, but we had a good time. I'm glad we're still doing it, but Yeah, I love the new stuff we're doing. So, and we're working on new
Yeah,
stuff now. So,
yeah. But before going through the new stuff, I want to stay a little bit stuck in the 80s and ask you about uh, first, because of course everyone knows, the Sunset Strip wave. But what about the Memphis? We could say
the what
Sunset
now?
Strip because, yeah, in the 80s, what about this? We can say the 80s era, 90s era of hard rock, hair metal in Memphis, because you were saying there were bands like Tora Tora, Every Mother's Nightmare. So it's
Yes.
like another Sunset Strip, for example, in Memphis. I was there back then.
Well, yeah. I mean, if I can get the, I mean, Memphis was a lot like what was going on in Memphis was a lot like what was going out in LA to a certain extent. I
Yeah.
think, but um, I don't know if I can answer the question right. I mean, it's we didn't come back to Memphis and play for a long time. So I mean, we were pretty much on the road. Um, when we did come back, we did a show with Tortora, and it was sold out at the amphitheater, and that was fun. But we actually just it was we had a short-lived we had a short-lived good time, should I say. And it was actually the demise of our band. We actually made a second record, and it just was going to get shelved. So I actually went and sang with Warrant, hung out with them for a little bit. And that's a long story, and it was fun. But then I've talked to you about this before. I had to reinvent myself.
Yeah.
So I started Saliva. I started a
Yeah,
band
that's
called
what I want to
Saliva.
ask you. Yeah, how did you change? Because it's a completely different genre from what you were doing before.
Well, I played drums in Saliva, and what had happened is
Okay.
the whole deal with that is so me and Wayne Sweeney, who's Saliva's guitar player, we've been
Yeah.
childhood friends our whole lives. And so I was playing in this little band after Roxy Blue. I had this band, and it was a pretty cool band. I was playing guitar and singing, and Wayne came out and saw us and said, "Man, we should start something." So I think for a short-lived time, we had a band called Sugar Ditch, and
Yeah.
I think Josh from Roxy played bass, and then the drummer we have now, Jimmy Fulton, was the drummer back then. And we played some shows with Tesla and a few of our friends, and
Wow.
it was fun, but it was short-lived. And then Wayne and I had a studio at my house, and he and I used to just sit in there and just kind of goof around. So I would get on the drums because I've been playing drums my whole life. And so I just started playing drums, and Wayne would play guitar, and we started writing these songs.
Yeah.
And somebody suggested that we call Josie, who played in a band called Blackbone. And we called him, and he showed up, and that's kind of how Saliva got started. It was kind of like a jam session. And then we got Dave, the bass player, and it just kind of evolved out of that. And we just wrote songs, and it was a
And
lot of fun. I mean, that's the thing. Everything I've done that's actually done anything has always been a situation where there wasn't a big struggle. Like
yeah.
every band has struggles, but everything came easy for those bands. Like we got together, everybody wanted to rehearse all the time.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you right now, and the older you get, the harder it is to go rehearse every single day. But back in the day, both bands, Roxy and Saliva, man, we rehearsed every day. Everybody wanted the same thing. We had a goal in mind. We wanted to make it. And we enjoyed jamming with each other. So every day we were writing new songs, and we couldn't get enough of it. And it was a good time. And so I was with Saliva all the way up to the Grammys. And then there was some things that went down that, some people got in trouble, and you know, drugs and, you know, whatever. And it just,
Yeah.
yeah, things just happened to kind of fall apart. So I left, and, you know, obviously the rest is history. They carried on and, you know, ended up doing pretty well. But I had a bad motorcycle wreck. I hit a telephone pole at 90 miles an hour on my R1. So I wasn't even sure I was even going to walk again, much less play music. I did get a call from Saliva guys wanting me to come in. Bob Marlette wanted me, their producer wanted me to come back and record. And I physically was not, you know, I was all shattered. My leg was still shattered.
Yeah, of course.
So I guess it wasn't in God's plan, I guess, for me to be in that band. I'd probably be dead right now. I'd probably be dead on a drug overdose if I'd have stayed with them. But it kind of woke me up to a lot of things. So my life changed completely. Of course, with my kids, I've got kids now, and I'm married. Amy Jameson, who is my father-in-law, my late father-in-law, Jimmy Jameson from the band Survivor. God rest his soul. He was, he was the golden voice of. That's a hard thing to be, the son-in-law of one of the greatest singers in the world.
Yeah, that's for sure. But then you come back in 2019 with someone new in the band, someone from Every Mother's Nightmare. If you want to introduce that.
Well, yeah.
And the new album.
Right. So what's weird is, so Roxy Blue wasn't together, and this is kind of a cool story. So my friend Rick Rule, who I saw last night, by the way, all the guys at Every Mother's Nightmare came out to our show last night, which was super cool. So Rick Rule would always tell me, man, you need to put Roxy Blue back together. And I just didn't feel good about it. It just didn't feel right. I had a band called 714 going. We were doing pretty good. I loved it. So finally, we got asked to do Bret Michaels' show at this amphitheater over near where we live. It's a big place. It's very nice. And the money was insane. So it was going to be Bret Michaels, Tour, Roxy Blue, Every Mother's Nightmare, and a couple other bands to open. So we were like, yeah, we'll do it. Well, while we were at rehearsals, I kept getting a phone call, and from the number that I didn't know. So we were taking a break, and I finally answered the phone, and it was a guy named Nick Teeter with Frontier Records. And he said that they had just signed Tortora, and they were interested in signing us. And then we said yes. And what's weird about it is it kind of gave us a reason to kind of get back together and shoot for something. So I think that was the thing that really got Roxy. We had a really good show at the amphitheater that night, and then we started making a record, and it was there. It seemed like the excitement was back. Of course, Sid wasn't with us, and Scotty T, our drummer, was still with us at the time. So we ended up getting a friend of ours named Jeff Codron, who was with Every Mother's Nightmare, and he was also with Full Devil Jacket and Jasmine Kane. Great guitar player, had a great attitude. He wanted to do it 24/7. So I was like, okay, cool. So we ended up making a record with Frontiers, and it turned out really well, man. It was totally different kind of record than Want Some, which 27 years later, what would you expect? So Jeff's still with us. We had a good time last night. I'm sure he's hurting today. And then now we have a new drummer, Jimmy Fulp, who is we recorded at his studio. So it's really the new, we'll get into talking about the new record that we're getting ready to do, but there's a really good chemistry with with our band right now. Everybody's tight. We all get along. I mean, we're all buddies. So probably in the best spot we've been in a long time. I'm happier than I've been in the band in a long time. So Josh and I are still going strong. I was going to see if I had this thing these people made me last night. They made all of us one. It's like this piece of metal, and it's got Roxy Blue logo carved out in it, and it's insane. But I think I took it in. But
that's amazing.
So yeah, other than that, we're just got a couple things. All of our shows got pushed back to 2022. We got some good shows coming up in 2022. Hopefully,
that's great.
And we're working on a new record. That's really the big deal with us right now.
What about that? What could you say about that?
Well, I don't know how much I can tell you about it, except we've got. I'm in a writing frenzy right now, so I go through that where I just write. So I think within the next 2 or 3 weeks, we should have 7 completed for the most part. We might have to go back and do a little bit, but I've already sang 5. We've got 2 more to do, and then we're going to bring Jeff and Josh. There's some more stuff. So we got a few little things to do, but the record is way different than the last record. It's a little more soulful. I don't know how to explain soulful, though. It's not funk or nothing like that. It's just I don't like to compare us with anybody because it people will get the impression that we're trying to sound like somebody. But I think it's more of I think we've got songs that kind of got a Foo Fighter vibe, kind of, maybe. I don't know. I mean, I'm saying that because it's, and then I wrote a song called When You're Not Around that I think has a little bit of a Black Crowes kind of thing, but not sounding like the Black Crowes, if you know what I mean. It's just got that Memphis thing. I think we've got a little more Memphis. I think we have a little more Memphis in us in this record and a lot less LA. So,
but I wanted to ask you more about your influences.
Do what now?
Influences.
My influences?
Yeah.
Well, okay, this was a good one. I love this. So my musical influences still really, they kind of changed over the years. So my first band that got me into rock and roll is my father bought me years and years ago, bought me Kiss Alive at the store, the record. And I opened that record up and I used to sit in my room for hours and listen to that record and just look at the pictures and dream and go, that was my life-changing experience right there. This is what made me want to play music, is these guys in this makeup that are playing rock and roll, that are blowing fire and spitting blood. And I was like, this is what I want to do for a living. And then crazily enough, my best friend lived across the street, brought me a record of a band called Target. And the lead singer was Jimmy Jameson, that became my father-in-law, who I said, I want to sing like that guy one day. So that's kind of weird how that happened. But my influences to this day, I think I've been influenced by different bands and different music, but I'm still a 70s. Well, I listen to the Beatles or Paul McCartney pretty much every day of my life, and have for years. I still think Paul McCartney is probably one of the greatest songwriters in my mind of all time. I love his music. I love the fact that he doesn't have any boundaries. So I learn a lot from him. Plus, I enjoy his music. I love Heart. I love Ann and Nancy Wilson. I love Heart. I've been a Heart fan forever. Amazing. I guess I would say, besides the Beatles and Wings, which are probably my iconic band, my 2 go-to bands for my whole life have been Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath. Those are going to be my two, no matter what kind of music's happened over the years, those two, and maybe a little splash of Cheap Trick, because I love Cheap Trick, and we did get a chance to, and we opened for them a month ago.
And you play it also in Graceland.
Oh God, that when we opened for Cheap Trick, and we opened for them at Graceland Live Soundstage here in Memphis, and it was sold out, and it was just, it's almost hard to talk about because it was a bucket list for us, and it was just an iconic show for us. I mean, it's one of those moments where you can say, well, if I never play another show, I got a chance to do that one, and that's good. But awesome. They were super cool guys. And
before ending the interview, I wanted just to ask you if you, since like many new generation didn't know and appreciate too much like this amazing genre that you know, what could you tell them just to catch them and listen this music? I think it's important for these people into metal, into rock, also this part of the history of music.
Well, you mean kind of like an advice?
Yeah.
Well, I don't really like to offer advice, but I do. I mean, it's weird. So, because I don't want to feel like, I know everything, but by my experience, by my experience, I would say to anyone that's, I don't know about what kind of business there is out there right now. Music's changed a lot. The business is really different than it used to be. So my advice to anyone would probably be, first and foremost, if you're writing songs, it's the only way you're ever going to do anything is you have to write songs. You have to be
from your soul and the life
right. And you have, but you have, if you're going to be serious about moving on in the music, whatever business, you have to play original music, obviously. I would say stay true to yourself. Don't try to follow trends and try to stay in the game, because what happens if you follow a trend is that by the time you get that down, something else starts. So I would just say be original. More than anything, love what you do. Love your music, love what you do, because if you quit loving what you do, then you need to stop, because the only thing that should drive you in music is your love for music. And I love people that play music, whether they're really good or whether they're not really that good, just for the fact that music to me is the universal language. I think it's good for the soul. I think music's good for healing. So I would just say, if you're out there and you got a guitar on or your drums, bass, keep whatever you're doing, singing, just do it with your heart and crank it up and play it as loud as you can, because you only live once and tomorrow might not be there. So have a good time.
Right. This could be a motto. This could be a motto for sure. So thank you so much, Todd, for this final interview that we are putting online now. Finally, we did it. And
we did.
Yeah, thank you so much. And when the album will be out, let me know, because we will do a live review about the new album. Let me know, because I really care about that.
You'll be the first to know. I'll let you know as soon as I get some stuff mixed.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. All right, see ya.
I'm one of your first fans of you or of you. Thank you so much. Bye. Bye, John.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.